Hey, I think we should start the webinar. We have people joining in. Hi, folks. This is Shailendra here. I'm the founder at Hypertest, and this is my co-founder and co-host, co-panelist, of course, Karan. Hi, Karan.
Hi, Shrinder. Hi, everyone.
Okay, all right. So this is the second webinar that we're organizing. The first that we did became really popular. The first one that we did, actually, we discussed the uh, applications of GenAI in testing. But it seems that this webinar has a more relevant topic because there are about 200 people who registered for this, and uh, and this time around we know that practitioners would join. Senior folks from different senior QA as well as test as well as engineering folks from different teams. So just taking a bit of lesson from our last webinar, what we'll do this time, Karan, is that we'll keep our discussion to the shortest minimum possible. We will just devote like the first 15 minutes talking about the agenda, the topic, and then we'll open up the webinar for our practitioners to ask us questions because that's where we want to focus most of our energy. Okay, all right. So let's start. So essentially, we live in a world where end-to-end testing is important, and test and QA engineers spend a lot of time ensuring that they prepare the right test data to get started with end-to-end testing. Now, why is it important to prepare test data? Well, the simplest of answers for that is that when you're trying to test your application, which has a flow that involves a user of your application, it becomes necessary to have all the details of that user in place before you start testing it. And the simplest thing that comes to my mind is that when you are trying to test login, say, in your application, you need to ensure that you have an existing user before you go out and test login, right? So it often is the number one priority of test teams because that test data preparation has the power to improve or deteriorate, the results of your end-to-end test, if done right or if not done properly. But to be honest, it's terribly hard. It's time consuming and very challenging and often repetitive. And I've heard from my friends who are in testing teams that it sometimes becomes the number one reason for QA burnout. So what I'll do in the next 2 minutes quickly, it does, believe me. So what I'll do in the next 2 minutes is discuss what makes test data preparation so terribly hard, and then maybe in the last 10 minutes of the call, we'll try to explain to, or maybe Karan will try to explain to people who've joined as to what is the most effective and a first principles approach to avoid test data preparation completely when you're trying to do end-to-end testing and still get really good quality outcomes. All right. I believe there are a lot of reasons why it becomes I believe there are a lot of reasons why test data preparation becomes really hard, but I can zero down on 4 big reasons. I think the first big reason is that when teams think of end-to-end testing, they want to test it as close to reality as possible. Okay, so you want to have test data. You would want to, and if you want to test your application as close to reality as possible, you need to have test data that mimics the complexity and the diversity of your actual user data. Now, the simplest example that comes to my mind is, say, for example, you're testing a flight booking application. Now, to completely test a flight booking scenario, you would have to ensure you take care of all the different permutation combinations that are possible so that you get the right outcome, right?
Right.
The second problem is the problem of data dependencies. Now, we live in a world of microservices. You cannot test systems in isolation. Most times, systems depend on other systems, which are called dependent systems. So when you're trying to test a system, engineers or test engineers need to be really sure that the system that particular system depends on supplies it the right data so that it can be tested properly. And a simple example is, for example, you were trying to test a supply chain management software, and what you're trying to test is inventory at a particular location, and if the inventory at a particular location is different depending on where it is, you need to be really sure that the data, the inventory data that you're trying to test has been supplied correctly to you, so that you can test the inventory tracking system on that location correctly. So that's the second big problem. The third problem is maintaining the consistency and integrity of data. Now, this is a pretty evident problem. I think I've seen a lot of test leads from fintech as well as financial service companies complain about it. You know, the simplest example is a banking app. If you want to ensure, and in most cases, this happens when the final outcome of your testing flow is a data value or a calculation that is core to the logic of your application. So in a banking app, the final outcome could be, say, account balance. So if you're trying to test the account balance of your banking app is correct based on whatever transactions you've done before, it is really, really important that you start with the right balance. So if it's negative, it can give you all kinds of false positives. And obviously, and the fourth and the most obvious culprit why data preparation is hard is because your application will continuously change, right? Right, Karan? So you'll keep building new features, you'll keep making changes. Every time there's a new feature or a new change, you would have to change or modify your test data to account for that change. So now the biggest question, and then why we set up this webinar, is that can all of this be avoided? Can it be avoided? Can test data preparation be completely avoided? So the way we can do this is that we'll take an example of a very simple e-commerce app that's going to make sense to all the participants here. And we'll show you what kind of data preparation needs to be done for somebody who's trying to test that e-commerce app. And then Karan, maybe at the later part of the call, can explain us how all of that can be completed avoided, right? So in a simple e-commerce app, and I think Karan, you would agree with me, what somebody is trying to test is that can a user log in, search the product, add it to cart, check out the cart, and do the payment, right? This is the most simplest, the most basic e-commerce flow that comes to
This
our mind.
this would be definitely one of the flows that you would want to test first when you're trying to test this e-commerce application.
That's right. And I think if somebody has to test this, I'm assuming at the back, the application is doing a lot of other steps. Like, for example, this what you see on your screen. The application at the back is trying to log in a user, verify his details, search the catalog, do a bunch of other steps before this flow can be tested. And what I'm trying to do here, Karan, and this is where I would like you to help me, is that the boxes that are marked in gray are the steps in this flow for which test engineers need to specifically prepare test data so that this flow can be tested
Right.
properly.
So
Right?
let's do it this way.
Sure.
So I'll try to explain this. So on the left-hand side, what you see, search product, add to cart. This is basically your business flow that you want to test. And on the right-hand side, like Shirendra has said, this is the actual application. So this is what's actually happening in your application at that point of time. Let's take a detailed view at this at one of the. I think you'll have to stop sharing so that I can share.
Sure. I'll do that.
Yeah.
So Karan is going to now explain us, what does this mean from the context of this e-commerce flow, what it means to prepare the data or have the data in place. And maybe, at the later part of the call, how all of this can be completed avoided. Over to you, Aaron.
Okay. My screen is visible, hopefully, right?
Right, it is.
Okay, great. So now, just having the same flow that we have seen in the presentation from a technical perspective, these would be 4 or 5 API calls that we make. Basically, the first step was to this basically also has a step 0 where we actually need a user to be created and logged in, and then that particular user is doing the searching for the particular product. This will call your gateway service, and now that also depends on a bunch of other services. This is basically the first step that we saw in the presentation. The second step was to actually now see this in a particular when you sort of see that, okay, these are the items that I want to add, we would add them. We would add those items in the cart. So in this particular case, we have chosen item ID 101. We would now go ahead and sort of we'd go ahead and add that into the cart. Cart is now going to check in the catalog whether this exists or not, whether the inventory exists or not, and this all comes back to data preparation. So when we do test this application, we need to make sure first the user is there, the user is valid, and now even that this item that we're trying to add, that should exist, that should be a real item, and it should have it should be available. It should not be out of stock. It should have stocks basically. Depending on the kind of e-commerce application, this can be either very simple or very hard. If you have a B2B kind of a setup where there can be multiple sellers shipping this product. So to get this test data prepared might be very challenging in itself. Now, the third step that we had seen was checking out. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right. So I think, so if I followed it correctly, you've already explained the two steps in which the data needs to be prepared. Those steps are first getting the user in order. So you need to have a user before you can actually, that's step zero. That makes sense. The second step is having a product, a real product in place that can be added to cart. Is it?
Right.
Okay. All right.
And that item should also be stocked.
That should be stocked. So you should have sufficient inventory. Right. And what did you say was the fourth test data that needs to be in place?
Right. So proceeding the flow, we would do a checkout. So there would be a payment gateway. So that needs to be up at that point of time. So this particular application can select which payment gateway to go with, or if there are a bunch of providers, which one to go for. That should be available at that point of time as well. And finally, this last step does not require anything from a data preparation perspective. But yeah, finally the order is created and the user does the payment, and then this flow sort of closes. And what we want to test in this particular flow is that when we run this, we have an order which is now marked as initiated. Initiated here means that this has been paid for.
Understood. So to completely test the flow, you need to have a user, a product, sufficient inventory, and a payment method in place so that you can test whether a user can add product and check out, right?
Right.
Now comes the important part. How do you think all of this can be avoided?
So if we have to avoid this, our application definitely needs, when we're trying to search for a particular product. Now, let's try to understand why we're doing this in the first place. We need that item to be returned to the user when he or she is searching for it. So it needs to be there in the database. Now, in order to avoid it, what we can do is mock away this database and replace this particular transaction that is coming from a database with a mock. So this essentially from an end-to-end test becomes...
Makes sense. Well, just small interruption. Okay, all right, that makes sense. A small interruptions, we've done a small poll in between, just to understand from participants if test data preparation is a problem for them or not. And we just collect the results, and maybe we'll collect the responses and show you the results at the end of the call. Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, Karan. Sorry for the interruption.
No issues. Yeah. So this was the actual flow, and this is what we are proposing, that when your application makes the call to your auth service or makes the call to your catalog service, let's mock it. So we're going to focus on the gateway service itself, but this can easily be replicated for auth service or catalog service or any other downstream services that we have in place in this particular flow. So the idea now becomes that instead of using real tests which need data preparation, we can use mocks. This solves a bunch of other problems as well. But right now, what we have done is just translate one problem, that was data preparation, to another problem, that is preparation and maintenance of mocks. So we have not really solved the problem, but we have changed it from one form to another, which has its other benefits. But for the purposes of preparation, we still need to have this thing in place.
Okay, all right. So I think let's sort of focus on the first important part. I think it's one thing that we should slow down and help participants understand, is that the reason you've been insisting on mocking at least the calls to the Redis service is to ensure that you don't need to create a fresh user every
Right.
time you start this flow, right?
Right. Right. Right.
As soon as you have the mock ready, you have a user in place,
It's
logged in
essentially trying
user,
to
so to
tell
say,
the service that
with a token
this
that is not expired.
right. It's trying to actually trick the gateway service into believing that this user is actually there. Gateway service does not know whether a user is
Hmm.
real or not, whether it's logged in or not. It depends on other services to this auth service to sort of depend on that. So now it does actually make that call to the auth service, and we have mocked it. So even if there is a
Okay.
no user, even if there is no DB, so gateway still believes that there is a user, and we do it for all the steps. And we would not need to prepare test data, but we do need to prepare mocks for this. All right. Now comes the question that we've just translated it from data preparation to preparation of mocks. How do we get rid of that manual step? Is there a way that we can do this without
Thought
basically with,
steps.
am I audible? Mm, not sure if I'm still
Yeah.
presenting.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. You're audible.
Okay. Okay.
No,
Great.
no, you're audible.
So I think there was a lag. Anyway, so right, we've just translated it from data preparation to mocks. Now we'll focus on how to auto-generate these mocks. Now, the best part about this problem, as opposed to the original problem, is that here we can get rid of this completely by using record and replay. What we can do is basically within the application, we can have an agent. Now, that can be an SDK or it could be a network agent, which basically intercepts and is intelligent enough to understand that this particular transaction, let's say this search call, actually makes this outbound call to the Redis service, sorry, to the auth service, and auth service does it to the Redis service, and the other call is to the catalog service, and this is the response. This can be intercepted, this can be understood, and generated automatically. The end result of that would be you would have an integration test with such an accurate level of mocks that it reflects what you would have gotten in an end-to-end test itself, without having the complexity to actually set up the infra for an E2E test and the reliability of a integration test with mocks. But the mocks
Makes
itself
sense.
are so good that you would be able to do away with most of your E2E tests.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I was going to slow it down. So, you've started out by telling us that in fact, we've got the results for the question we shared. Like about 75% of the participants participated in the poll, and an overwhelming 97% of the people feel that test data preparation is a problem. So, I think we are talking about the right stuff. So, I'm going to
Mhm.
share the results before I move ahead. Here are the results. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing. I think it's visible to everybody.
Right.
All right. So I think so. I'm going to slow it down. So what you said is that the simplest way to avoid preparing data is to have mocks, and the way to what the problem it solves is that it makes the system believe that the user or the state at which the application should be with respect to the database has already been achieved. So you don't need to put elaborate test data preparation, but you basically saying that you take money from one pocket and put it the other, right? So because
Right.
the effort from preparing test data has now been shifted to preparing mocks. Now the second thing that you're saying, and it's very important, is that you have just told us of another new Superman that will somehow sit in the application and figure out a way in which it can record all the interactions between these components. Recording these interactions are basically another word for building mocks. Now, how do you think, now these mocks, basically I do it or some Superman does it, great, my problem of building mocks is being solved. But how do you how do you answer for maintenance? Like how do you ensure that, I don't have to continue put in effort to keep changing these mocks, because the reality will keep changing, right?
The simple answer here would be that you did not prepare them in the first place. So if these are updated or these need updation, they can be continuously monitored for changes. And if there is a change, that can be highlighted to you that, okay, a mock that we have created does not reflect what your application is behaving right now. And when you run this test, basically, you would be able to know that, okay, your test essentially is going to fail. And when your test fails, you would have an option to do the same thing again, recapture the flow, which will now capture it with new mocks, and you can discard the old test and have the new one. But I don't think we're trying to focus on that part. What we
Right.
are trying to focus here is that you don't need to prepare data, replace it with mocks. Now you don't even need to do the mocking part yourself. We can have interceptors for that. That way, you get a integration test which is performing better than an E2E test, and has the uh, and has all the benefits of ditching the E2E test because it's more reliable. Another side effect of this is that this flow that we are testing, and in fact, what we have been talking through and through, this looks like a flow
Makes
that
sense.
this is, in fact, we even have step one, two, three. So there is some sort of chronology to it, but we do not need that if we are testing the application using mocks. Now,
Mm.
since this need not be strictly followed, what can be done is that these four steps, they can be tested in parallel. We can test the checkout flow directly without depending on the result of the search call, or on the or of the result of the add to cart
Got it.
functionality,
Got
basically.
it. Got it. In fact, there's a question here that's pretty relevant, and I think we should take that, and that should answer
Okay.
some of the things that we're explaining. So Sandeep here is asking us, is mocking the data the right approach? Because test case which are mocking for testing may cause the issue in real life. So I think the question is coming from the fact
Right.
that you mock and you're stuck with a stale or a static mock, right? And the
Right.
reality might change. So what you're mocking today might not be valid tomorrow. So how do you ensure that what you're mocking stays live and alive, so to say, so that you would never miss problems? What's your answer to that?
Here's where CI actually comes in. So, in order to stale that mock, you would need your application to update and not honor the mock the same way it used to work before. So, whenever any change is pushed into your application, your test run, if that test fails, or basically you basically need an advanced mocking system itself, which detects if there is a change in mock itself. So, for example, my screen is still visible, right?
That's right.
So what I will do is just take this example. Let's say you are trying to add this particular API, trying to add this particular item in the cart. Now, your mock says that you are adding item 101. Now, if there is a bug in your application, or if you change something that it's not just the item ID and there are two or three other things as well that are required, uh, you should be notified that this mock is no longer valid and you need to redo the test, basically. In
Okay.
fact,
Okay.
this is
So you're
one of the
saying there
capabilities that
definitely
we
is a
have in
way
our
in
system.
which, yeah, right. That we shameless plug by Karan Raina, that we have some capability in our system that can take care of it. But yeah, I think the answer to Sandeep's question would be that there is a way in which, if you have mocked an external system, you can be notified that the external system's behavior has changed. So the mock needs to be updated so that you keep testing against the current real version of your external systems. That is definitely possible. I hope, Karan, I've explained that in simpler terms as you wanted to, right?
In fact, Sandeep also summarizes it well. He says that, is this the same like updating test case with every new change or requirement? It's not exactly like that. You don't have to. Uh, so basically, we don't uh, update the entire test case. We don't have to sort of entirely do away with step one, two, and three if there is only a change of four. If there is an only change in step four, what we do is that since we are observing this continuously, we would have a version of step four which is which works according to the older logic, and we would have the version which works according to the new logic. And when we run our test, basically the old one is going to be discarded. That okay, you're saying that old one is old. It becomes old by you telling us that this is no longer true. We'll stop testing.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. All right. So there's a question by Clinton who's trying to ask how to perform end-to-end integration testing without test data preparation. So I think I'll just take that, and maybe you can add, Karan, if I don't explain it well. So Clinton, what we're trying to explain in this call is that you can do end-to-end testing by converting your end-to-end scenario into simpler integration scenarios. Because as we started, and maybe Karan, you can flash the presentation that I made. In that specific case, we had those 4 steps in place, right? A user logs in, searches for a product, tries to check out, add it to cart, and then check out for payment. And at the back, the application is doing a lot of steps in sequence. So mocking gives you the advantage to test that entire scenario, one step at a time, without having to run that scenario in sequence from top to bottom, right from step 1 to step 4. So in simple terms, if your end-to-end scenario is made up of 4 steps, you can test it by testing any of the steps independently of the other. In a classic end-to-end scenario, you would have to execute it. You have to execute step 1 and step 2 first before you test step 3, right? But in an integration test, which is built on mocks and built properly, you can actually test your end-to-end scenario, or you can test your step 3 in an end-to-end scenario without having to intentionally call out step 1 and step 2. So you are basically at the end testing a scenario, but you have made it so simple and fast that all that for to test step 3, the preconditions, which are step 1 and step 2, are automatically fulfilled. So you get the same result in quick time and without having to do all that elaborate data preparation. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but this makes it much simpler and much faster.
I think that should have
all
answered
right.
it. We can take the next one, I
Okay,
guess.
all right.
What are the
Sure.
things need to take for mocking? I mean, how it can be prepared. Okay, so you're saying if I understood the question correctly, you're saying that how can we enable a system like this, which sort of enables the whole thing? What are the things that you need to need to basically take into picture? Well, there is Hypertest. We do have we do have an SDK which sort of does this, offloads it for you. But let's say if you have to do it from scratch, what you would need to do? You would need to create an agent or an SDK, which is going to you can use what is called as a tracing agent. There are open source alternatives like OpenTelemetry that you can use. You can build an agent on top of it, which is going to which is going to uh, have a trace, which basically says that okay, this is my this is the start of my trace. This is my actual request, and here this is the outbound call that is of that request. And then from this outbound call, you will also have another outbound call. In fact, let me show the record mode itself. Your tracing system is going to give you this data that this application calls for this API call. It calls this API, which calls this query in Redis. Now this application also calls another API on another service, which queries this into my SQL database and then gives back the product. So you'll get this in the entire. You'll get this in a trace format on any tracing system. You can use any sort of APM for that. Now the trick is to sort of use that data and to augment it in such a way that when you want to test your application, this information is sort of converted into a mock for you, and then your application, instead of hitting the auth service or catalog service here, is handled by the mock itself. One such project is Hypertest, but you can do that on your own as well.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. And Clinton has just added, another question on the previous question that he asked, is that, so if I mock it or ask Hypertest SDK to mock it, I'm sorry, I'm just sort of reading it quickly in verbatim so that I don't miss anything. The mocking does take place. If I do the mocking, then things are under my control completely. If hypertest mocks it, I need to have hypertest integration plus debugging knowledge. Plus, I need to verify the results of hypertest. Is my understanding correct, Karan?
Right, your understanding is correct here. Definitely, you would need to, and if you do it yourself, it is going to be a task. You'd need to have a picture. You'd have to set up this whole thing in place. And if you use our SDK, there would be some sort of a learning curve on our UI, our dashboard, and how to see those results as well. I don't see any way out of it. But what we have done is made it so simple that you can basically look your API calls as a Postman collection, and you can even see what are the mocks that are available uh, for a particular request, and how many of those mocks were actually used and used correctly, and how many of those mocks were not used correctly because now the application has changed. In fact, there is a regression in your mocks itself. You would be able to see that as well.
So basically, the problem generally, Karan, is the idea of building something that you have to maintain, and maintaining a mocks itself is a big problem. I think there are other technical challenges to doing it yourself. But I think
So,
as Sandeep asked in the beginning, that maintaining mocks is a problem
oh,
in the sense that mocks.
I'll just cut in here. Clinton asked another question. So, what is the benefit to be derived for me? Okay, so the benefit would be that you don't have to do it. It's in when you're using Hypertest SDK, you're not. So this webinar was not for Hypertest SDK itself, but when you're using Hypertest SDK, the whole action of creating mocks, updating mocks, and seeing whether the mocks are correct or not, whether your application behaving correctly or not, is done effortlessly, seamlessly, without writing any code yourself. This happens automatically. You don't have to write or tell us what is a mock. The system figures this out automatically. You just have to see the results. You don't have to tell us what to mock and what not to mock. The SDK mocks it automatically. That's basically what would be the benefit. Hope
And the
that
other
answers your
thing,
question.
yeah, another thing, Karan, on that is that, and Clinton, what we'll do is that we will build these mocks based on real transactions. So we will basically look at your application traffic. And then from there, we will be able to figure out how different systems in your application talk to each other. So we are not going to be building mocks or, you know, or will not be monitoring make believe interactions between your systems, something that are in our head, but how your system actually interacts, or how different systems in your application actually interact with each other. So, long story short, our mocks will be more close to how your application is used in the real world, which means that you'll basically be testing, so to say, an actual user using your application, which gives you better confidence in case that specific flow fails anytime in your testing. So that is the other part of why the benefit that you might get of using something like hypertext. Again, no, you know, the webinar was not for us to present when testing can be simplified, and test data preparation is something that can be avoided. That's the idea. Okay. I think we have another question. All right. Okay. So I think we got a little digressed. I think we did answer some of these questions. So Karan, why don't you summarize for us as to what do you think is the how do you think, in your words, is the right way to say test data preparation can be avoided for somebody who are after end-to-end testing?
Okay, so just to summarize it again, uh, we can switch from end-to-end test to an integration test with mocks, and generating mocks manually can be replaced by generating mocks through an agent, and that would sort of take care of maintaining building a test suite which is uh, scalable, which runs fast and is accurate because it was generated from a real scenario. And for that, you can utilize record and replay instead of writing it yourself.
Right. So basically, so the world is after end-to-end testing. It has its benefits, but the biggest one of the biggest reasons why it's difficult to make end-to-end testing work in the right way, or maybe in the right time frame, is test data preparation. It takes a lot of time. It's pretty elaborate, but there is a way to completely avoid it by converting end-to-end test into smart integration test, the goal is to still achieve the results that an end-to-end test would achieve, which is basically trying to test a flow, as we, I think, as we explained in the case of an e-commerce app. But if we are able to smartly mock interactions between the different systems and also update them in a way that they keep testing against the current reality of all these systems, then you basically get an approach which tests your application end to end, but doesn't require elaborate, in fact, requires no data preparation, right? Karan, it doesn't require any data preparation at all.
Right. If you do it this way, you don't need to prepare anything, because the data is prepared on the fly when the actual real interaction happened with your application in the first place. So technically, there is data preparation or there is mock generation, but you're not the one doing it. It is automated behind the scenes for you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so we'll close the webinar on that note. And in fact, I've got the last poll question shared with all the participants and practitioners. I'm sorry we couldn't discuss or explain how hypertest could play a role in making this happen. And because
Maybe
we
we can
ran
have another webinar for
short
that.
of time, we just had 30 minutes. Absolutely, we can plan another webinar for that, and we'd be interested if there are specific people who joined the call, at least the participants who want to get on a one-to-one strategy session, just to understand what the approach that we're talking about really means and how it can actually achieve what we are claiming to achieve. We're happy to get on a call, a one-to-one call, and you can let us know if you, or we can organize it for that. But before we end the call, just on a just for our feedback, let us know if the approach that we discussed made sense, and if you think that it does not, we have your questions, have them answered. The reason we say that this approach is because we work for close to about 100 plus teams. So this approach, share that data if people are interested or do more detailed deep dive. So thanks for, I would thank everybody for attending this webinar. Thanks, Karan, for doing a very detailed presentation on what it means to solve this problem. And we'll keep notifying people of any future webinars that we organize. In fact, we love your feedback on topics, anything that you think is important from your testing needs and goals that we should touch on. Again, we don't want to present Hypertest too much, but yeah, Hypertest does claim to solve some of these problems. And please check us out on hypertest.co if you need more details. We have more information about our approach, who's using it, and how they've been able to benefit from it from our website. I think there are a couple of questions here. I think we should take them before we. Yeah, I think there is a recording for this, Clinton. So we'll share that after the call, and you can share it around. But again, thanks for everybody joining. I'm sorry to cut it a little short because of time constraint, but hopefully we'll organize more webinars.
Just one last thing,
Here
Clinton.
would join them
Mock
again.
from
All
XT
right.
will not
Thanks a lot.
fail unless
Sure.
you have made changes in the application, which if the mock itself becomes incompatible, only in that case would there be a failure reported. But apart from that, there would be no failure because it does not depend on any other system. It hooks very tightly with your system. Maybe hopefully we are able to get on a call someday and we can show you this show this to you in action. That would answer these and even further questions that you have.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. So thanks for this, Karan. Thanks everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar, and let's hope for more such useful and educative webinars from Hypertest in future. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye bye all.